Welcome to the Communicating Earth podcast by Climate Acceptance Studios, the podcast by and for climate and nature communicators. So I first encountered Caroline Prak through a LinkedIn post announcing a new tool for climate and nature communication. I'm not going to say what it is yet. That's part of the point of this podcast. But what I will say now is that I've had the idea to develop the very same tool myself. But it was Caroline and not me who took action and had the smarts I do not possess to do it. Caroline's impressive career has taken in communications, media, and operational roles, working for Oxfam, Les Glorieuses, and Friends of the Earth, with work ranging from community organising to updating the identity guidelines of an international NGO, taking in international PR success and high-profile op-eds along the way. Over the past 9 months, she has taken a career break to, amongst other things, deep dive into the potential for AI to save our planet. Caroline says that merging artificial intelligence with climate communication is a contrarian bet she is willing to defend. She believes that everything, not anything, should be tried and tested to overcome what she sees as a story problem with internal enemies, a tendency to over-engineer messages. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Liam. I'm super happy to be with you today.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I think your work is sort of outstanding. So we start off with a little bit of identification. You've had this very sort of varied career, but overall, do you consider yourself an activist, a campaigner, an advocate, an environmentalist, or indeed something else?
I would say I'm a communications strategist overall, and I work on public interest topics such as gender equality, humanitarian inequality, and of course, climate change. And right now, as you said, I think that AI is quite interesting in terms of opportunity, and I'm building Understories, which is a tool, an AI communications tool for us to build and to share better stories.
Very good. Let's talk more about that later. Okay, so you see yourself as a strategist first and foremost. Why do you define yourself in that way?
I think that being a strategist link your vision and your planning and overall understanding of one topic in a way that is very focused and also a bit results oriented. So having a strategy in terms of communications means that you align your work and your activities with the organizational goals and organizational strategy, and it goes hand in hand. I also feel that a lot of NGOs use and see communications as an output, and I see communications as an infrastructure. So being there from the start until the end to have a merge in terms of goals and different types of outcomes. May they be about understanding and changing perceptions and social norms, but also lobby and change, a policy, having a mass mobilizations in the streets, and it starts from the beginning with resourcing and with also clear activities and goals.
So why do you think it is that NGOs sometimes make that mistake around what strategy is?
It depends of NGOs. I've been in NGOs that value communications from the start and, see themselves at the leadership level as a PR machine. So that's very interesting to work in such NGOs. And other NGOs are a bit lagging behind in terms of communications because they don't have the culture, or maybe they haven't seen, what it's like when communications is used as a strategic tool. So it really depends on the culture, on the leadership, and also on what you produce. And sometimes when you're very technical, it's very hard to do strategic communications. But when you aim at doing movement building and when you aim at making things mainstream, you need to consider communications as part of your strategy.
So I speak to communications professionals in the NGO sector daily, sometimes hourly, and they're often complaining to me about like budget cuts from funders
Yeah.
who deprioritize communications. So how much of that do you think is led by the funders rather than the NGOs themselves?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's an overall architecture, and the funders should have the responsibility of really see, what they really want to achieve, and what is the kind of partnership they want to have with certain NGOs. I really feel like maybe 20 years ago, it was very important to have reports to write expertise about certain topics. So we needed to have these policies. But now we have this stack of reports that are shared, and we don't need more reports. I really feel like the cognitive load of information is full, but it's not more information that will bring more emotion and a change of behavior. For that, you need stories. And I think that shifting the priority to fund storytelling and narrative building is very important now for funders, because we have enough information, but we need to transform this emotion into emotions and into stories. And this is what is part of my thesis with Understories.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely right. So, yeah, we do need stories now. Now we're working with this UCL academic Chris Demare, and he talks about how it's stories of action that inspires action, and he's a behavioural scientist. He's proved this. So we're very much about that. This is the whole remit of the podcast. I would love to tell you, find out one or two stories of action in your career. But before we get on to that, firstly, I mean, why do you think it is that more action is not being taken in the weight of such evidence, heat waves now, floods, or indeed, do you disagree with that question? Do you think action is being taken at the right levels?
Yeah, I think that it's tricky because we're now in 2026, and it's the fifth year in a row that global news coverage has declined. Since 2021, that was the momentum. So I think a lot of action is being taken by individuals, by communities, and by cities, but not enough from governments and big corporations. So that's for sure we have some kind of gap. I think that we also have this kind of gap with how the news talk about climate action and how the news talk about what is done by who and when. So there is
Mhm.
this narrative that also needs to be maybe studied so that we can, change a bit of the mindsets of people. And in link with this gap between information and cognitive and stories and emotional and narrative, I also feel that too much emphasis is put on resisting, and what we need is to have stories of people building. So not only resisting and having fossil fuels in mind, but resisting and imagining a future that is based on clean energy, healthy food systems, etc., etc. And we have this hope-doom balance, it's not 50-50 between resisting and building. For people to really get into imagination in a better way, the good ratio is 70% hopeful message and 30% doom messages.
So you think that there is enough action being taken, but it's not being communicated, or more action needs to be taken and it will happen as a result of improved communication? I mean, what's your
Yeah,
position?
I think that more action and alternative action should be taken, communicated at the right level with the right story to the right audiences. And it cannot only be global news coverage. It should be considered like this is a local story, this is a story of hope, etc., etc. So we're in a moment where we can't really think only about the US, Europe, etc. A lot of stories have been, happen in Africa, in South Africa, in Indonesia, etc. And I hope also with AI that all these translations will bring new stories, new archetypes of climate activists, and a new way to engage. So we're at a crossroads now.
So let's move on now to like your own tale of action. Is there a particular thing within your career that you think might like inform and inspire our audience?
Um, I think that I was very privileged to take part and be part of an amazing campaign in France. So I'm based in France, in Paris. And it was called the case of the century, l'affaire du siècle. And that's a litigation case that happened in 2018, right after the COP24 in Katowice, Poland. And it was super nice. So it was very easy in terms of sequencing. We had the protagonist, 4 NGOs, Oxfam, Greenpeace, Notre Affaire à tous, and La Fondation Nicolas Hulot. We had a villain, the states in action. We had some kind of a dramatic arc. We issued a preliminary request. We wait. They replied. We were not happy with the reply, so we went to court. We fight them in court, and we win. We won. And in addition to that, we had something big at stake, which was actually a real tension. Is Paris aligned with the Paris Agreement? So what is it in this country? This case is very emblematic because we had 1 million signatures. So it was
Wow.
huge. We overachieved quite quickly. And also from the beginning, it was not our campaign. It was a popular campaign. So it was not only the 4 NGOs suing the government, it was the million of people signing the petition that were joining their forces to ours. And it was like a very popular campaign, and I really liked it.
So I want to hone in on 2 things there. Firstly, like, how did you go about getting 1 million signatures?
So it was in 2018. And what happened is that we had an internal way of organizing between the 4 NGOs. It's not easy. It's a coalition campaign. So there's always this kind of friction. We don't really know. It's very new. But we had some kind of working groups, a strong governance, decision-making, and roles. So I was part of the communications working group. There was a policy working group, a legal one, and the executive directors making the call and the decisions. So that was the internal part. And we also were kind of senior, all knowing each other for like 10, 15 years sometimes. So there was this commitment to succeed. And we all kind of overworked, but there was a fair amount of overwork. So you want to commit to that. So that was the internal part of the strategy. The external part is that us alone to build such a big campaign is not enough. You see everyday coalitions campaign, it's very random in a way. So the innovation came from the external partners that we got. So we partner with 2 collectives of content creators on YouTube. And these 2 collectives, like we made a video that really was targeted to their audience, and it was their distribution channel on their platform.
Okay.
And that's the way that we use their audience and the way that they talk, their messaging, their humor, their like how to say girl next door or boy next door kind of attitude. Very funny and very ironic and not serious and boring. So we had these external partners to, use the platform on. And ourselves, a bit like your invitee, the guest you had Tamzin talked about, as NGOs, we changed our posture. So it was not our campaign. It was not our branding, our ego. It was nothing like that. It was the public. So it was very public centric. And the fact that we stepped back and let it to the content creators to do that made it very relatable to a lot of people. And I think it's a very good learning that it's never about you. It's always about the people.
So it was unbranded, was it? There was no, Oxfam's logo was nowhere to be seen.
Only at the end, and the branding was l'affaire du siècle, so the case of the century. And on the video, no one from the NGO appeared online.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was really like not a faceless, but it was so many faces that at the end you feel yourself part of it. And the NGOs were part of the people, like the spokespeople as usual, so that we could relate to the lawsuits.
And those working groups that you discussed, I mean, how exactly did they work? Did you meet online? Did you meet in person? Like, who organized that? How did that work?
Yeah, it's like non-stop communications. WhatsApp, meeting online, no Zoom because it was before the pandemic, so meeting in person every week, etc. So there was some kind of autonomy and also a very natural distributions of skills. For instance, I was part of the communications team, but quite early, I kind of prioritized the PR work, which is one of my strengths, talking to journalists, pitching them, etc. And also because we had a very strong spokesperson with our executive director at Oxfam. A lot of work needed to be done on the digital side. And Oxfam is good about that on digital, but Greenpeace was better. So they kind of hosted the website of the coalition. Then La Fondation Nicolas Hulot was very good in managing the data. When you build such a big petition, you need to have everything prepared in advance because it's sending. So they prepared all the stack, all the kind of newsletter delivering, how the name domain was recognized, so it was not rejected, etc. It was very, very technical, and also all the kind of reporting. What is the rhythm, etc. We had 4 different lawyers, each for one organization, and they also communicated and, were very reactive on everything that was happening. So the skills were kind of well distributed, I would say. And it was done in high intelligence between people who trusted each other, and also knowing what your boundaries are. Like, this is not my level of decision making. It should go to digital. It should go to executive directors, etc.
But was there like a lead organizer amongst the coalition of 4 that was overseeing everything and bringing it together? Like, who was the person who was deciding you're best at that thing, you're best at that thing, and so on?
Operationally, it didn't really happen like that, because it was more like, okay, this is the to-do list, who's doing what and when. And sometimes we just agreed so that, the big newspaper were not only for Oxfam or the best online, So it was kind of collaboration and smart collaboration. So you need also to push back or to agree before you enter the chat. So that was the operational part. And in terms of strategic part, it was a consensus between the 4 organizations, which was also part of the innovation architecture. It's not because Greenpeace is like 100 times the size of Notre Apparatus, the smallest one, that Greenpeace had more power. It was not at all like that. It was very well distributed. Also because Notre Apparatus was the first one coming with the idea. So they were the original player, and they were very smart with this idea. So I think this consensus between the 4 NGOs, you have disagreements, you have different ways of working or a different vision. When the campaign was so strong, you really need to be accountable and humble, and that's the way it happened.
What were the challenges along the way? There must have been some bumps in the road.
Yes, there were some challenges. I would say that for me, because I'm a planner, I like to have, everything organized. And I have to say that for me, the main challenge was uncertainty, because you build something, but you don't really know what's happening. It's the first time, there's no precedent. So you're building the bike while riding it. That's the first point. The second point was about the noise. When you go to the public space and you create a debate around such a big, bets, it's not a petitioning or lobbying, it's suing the government. And, for a lot of decades with lots of inaction. So I think that the noise was also a part of the, the challenges, people criticizing, attacking you, dismissing you. And the third one is also the reality of a lot of NGOs, including Oxfam, which is that you work on this beautiful campaign, but that's not your only thing, the only thing you have on your plate. So at the same time, I was working on another big moment for Oxfam, which was the Davos Inequality Report in January. So yeah, you have to split your time in a very coherent way, so that it's not one campaign and not the other, but a bit of both.
So going back to that uncertainty, like how did you deal with that? Like, what were your own personal tactics? I mean, I very much empathize. Right now, we're going to go and film at a bunch of conferences, and half of the events aren't even organised yet, and I'm sort of sitting here in purgatory, in a state of uncertainty right now. So I do empathise. So how do you deal with that, both on a personal level and also a professional one?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but I think that is also a learning, in a way that I learned to let go of so many ways of working during this campaign.
Okay.
And for me, because I was not the only one, handling this uncertainty, there was a lot of solidarity between us in the team and in the coalition. And sometimes I was like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what's happening, but let's do it. Let's go. And if we fail, it's fine. This will be fun. And it's not only you personally or individually, it's like the whole coalition. So you deal with the uncertainty I think with solidarity and being transparent and vulnerable, and most of the time actually it happened. Yeah, it went quite okay. So it was quite fun on this part.
Very good, very good. Okay, let's talk about those million signatures, like on a technical basis.
Yeah.
Like, did you develop tools? What platform did you use? What was your marketing technique? I mean, how did you go about doing that?
So I was not part of it directly. It's just an email, to be honest. You have your platform and just the homepage was a call to action. Sign the petition, support us suing the government for climate inaction. The whole infrastructure was like very safe and, it's super, like I didn't know things like that existed, to be honest. And Greenpeace and a lot of other people, but I think Greenpeace and La Fondation Nicolas Hulot were the lead.
Hmm.
And we couldn't believe it, to be honest, at the beginning when we saw the amount. Like, so a lot of us were like, is it a bot? Is it an attack? Is it realistic? Do you have like maybe one person signing for 20 or 100 different emails? Like we couldn't believe it. And then everybody, especially the content creators, they were like, yeah, it's normal because they do videos every week where they have millions of views. And us NGOs, we never have millions of views.
Yeah.
No, that's the gap in terms of culture and in terms of expectations. And now we had like 40 different content creators, each one on their channels, each one with their distribution, etc., etc. And then us with our own channels, newsletters, social media, the press work, etc., etc. So at the end, yes, it makes sense that you get 1 million signatures. But the objective was to get the 1 million signatures in 3 months. And with hard work every day, it's kind of, okay, we do it this way and let's be creative, not one day. And to be sure that these were real signatures, there was all this kind of checking. So real emails, no doubles, and there was this kind of rhythm. What is the rhythm of signatures? Do we have like 10,000 in 1 second? You know that this is a bot. But if you have a steady rhythm of signatures, if you have the geographic distribution, okay, 1/10 is in Paris, then this is you, that kind of map the whole French territory. Is it happening, at like, what do you say, that daily, or during the day and not at night at 3 a.m. No one signs a petition at 3 a.m.
Hmm.
So it was this kind of global picture that that ensured us that this was real. And there was an attack also at some point, and we dismissed the signatures that we thought were part of an attack. Also, they were coming
Interesting.
from a foreign country. So we kind of felt, yeah.
So, yeah, so that attack was from a foreign country, and so what was the fear was it was just trying to discredit the overall number. They could come out and say we attacked, or I mean, what was the motive there? What was their end goal?
Yeah, actually, what happened is that we didn't get in touch with them. There was just at some point an anomaly in where the thing was supposed to happen that made it, raising doubts on what it's coming from. And the digital specialist that worked on it just dismissed it in a way that if we have an audit, people will ask. And the thing
Yeah.
is that this is not normal. And you don't want to claim signatures you don't deserve. You want to be honest, and you'd rather downgrade than, lying and upgrade, or I don't know how to say that correctly. So at that point, we just dismissed it without exactly knowing where it was coming from. But for such a petition with this audience, of course, you will be attacked. And of course, there's always this kind of people playing with the petitions. And for 1 million petition, like for a small petition that only gets 100,000 signatures. So it was part of the game. We were prepared. I think we reacted very well. And the digital specialist gave an interview about it where we explained things in more technical ways.
Hmm.
I think it's very important to not only be transparent and accountable, but also be sure that the objective and the purpose that we communicate on it's about a legal issue. So you want to be, very clear that you hold the standards, at, your standards, and you walk the talk.
But I mean, you've gone from like 3 months to 1 day. You must have. I mean, was everything built on really strong servers where there was no time it was ever going to crash? Because it was so unanticipated, the success of it.
We didn't really anticipate it that way, but technically it was ready for it not to crash.
Okay.
And because I wouldn't say that we were the four biggest NGOs, but Greenpeace, Oxfam, and La Fondation Nicolas Hulot, it's quite a big ticket, let's say, with big website audiences, a big base in terms of newsletters, and
Hmm.
the kind of signing people. So we knew that individually, I wouldn't have expected it from any of us, but collectively, that was the best case scenario. But we needed to be prepared for that, also for our credibility, and also because we had these external partners that were quite very heavy in terms of audience. So we're happy it didn't crash. It could have, totally.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but we've got to move on because I think that this, my understanding is that this sort of gave you sort of a love of or interest in data and the
Yeah.
technological side of things. Actually, I just want to ask one more question. So, why is it that these influencers are getting millions of views, but the NGOs aren't? And do you think indeed that's still the case today, 8 years later?
That's a real question. I really want to give credit to them. I think that a lot of people feel like influencers are just people, with their cameras doing stupid stuff or serious stuff, but they're not really journalists. They
Hmm.
don't really have an expertise, and actually they work very hard. Um, they they own the platform. They know exactly what to say, when to say it, and who they're talking to. And they are data driven because they are on platforms that are natively digital with a lot of metrics. And they want also to really connect with people. And we know that NGOs, and that's a legacy from, 1980s, 1990s, before the digital world, they're a bit less audience centric. And I forgot what is the research because I have too many research in mind. But one of the research said that communications cannot be a top down. You give information and people will absorb it. It can't happen this way. And some NGOs still continue to talk with information and not stories, and in the one directional way. When you have influencers like that, they tell stories, they are relatable, they create an emotional connection, but they also always interact, sometimes in live, with their audience. They publish the video, they have comments, they reply, they see, So they have this sense of zeitgeist that we are a bit disconnected to because we only work on our reports and on our niche. And you need to live in the real world. And I feel like this was an example of a good partnership between people who have the credibility, the expertise, and also the means legally to sue the government and to have a discussion at a very high elite level. But we couldn't have done it with and they really bring something that was very much the trust and the warmth that we sometimes are missing in NGOs.
This message around our strategy needing to be audience first is also something I've heard from other guests as well, most notably the amazing John Marshall at Potential Energy Coalition.
Yeah.
So for people who are just new to the podcast, go back and listen to that episode as well. Okay, well, so we're now moving on to the quickfire round,
Mhm.
although the quick part of that is a bit ambiguous from experience, but
Yeah,
we'll give it a go. So, so are you ready,
I'm
Caroline?
ready.
Very good. So, what's the first word that comes to mind when I say climate?
Balance. The climate is disrupted, it should be balanced, and we can try to make it balanced back.
That is a new answer. Very interesting. Who's your personal inspiration within climate nature communications?
I would say Rebecca Stolnitz. She's a writer, an activist, but she's also a poet. And I feel like she's part of these people that really build new imaginaries, and she's very good. And she gave an interview 2 months ago. The journalist asked her what she preferred between sound and between noise and silence. And she replied that she likes the sound of wind in trees and the sound of rain on windows at night. This kind of person.
Amazing, amazing. I hope people can dig out that interview and put it in the show notes. Is there someone's work out there that you think should be receiving more attention?
Um, Grassroots communities, thousand NGOs, I think, especially like frontline communities. And it's very personal, but one of the groups I love the most is Justicia Ambiental in Mozambique, and the leader is Anabela Lemos. She received a Rights Livelihood Award 2 years ago, and she's an amazing person, an amazing team. She's very into generativity, integrity, etc. You can also have fish risotto with her and having fun. But I really like the way that she gives her platform for everyone. She has this generosity, and for me, she's the true climate activist.
Wow, I've not heard of her. I'll look her up afterwards. Do you have a favorite piece of culture, a book, a movie, or a TV show on our sector?
Um, I don't want to be a snob, uh, so I won't say a book, but I really think that pop culture is important because it really shifts the social norms. And I think that what Netflix did with Don't Look Up
Hmm.
was really nice because it was mainstream. And it didn't talk about climate change. It talked about climate denial and misinformation and how absurd it was, including when you were a scientist. And for me, that's the first step in the door, having this. And then you can talk about books, etc. But Don't Look Up Netflix. It's super nice.
What's your favorite communications channel?
Well, as you said, I've spent a lot of time studying during the last 6 months. So I spend a lot of time in university libraries and bookstores. And actually, you have a lot, every day changes. And right now, I spend a lot of time in bookstores.
And what do you think is the most effective communications channel?
Having a drink at a terrace, 1-to-1 in person, is the best for me.
Oh, that's the most common answer. Unfortunately, it's not scalable, but maybe we've just got to start interconnecting conversations between people and creating chains of action.
Yeah,
Uh, do,
totally.
uh, do you have a favorite stat or fact about climate crisis?
Yes, it's a start from Ed Maybar that you invited. So he's a researcher from George Mason University.
Hmm.
And he did a research with Yale program on climate change communications. I think it was 10 years ago, and it linked climate with health issues. And his stat was 49% of people trust their doctor to deliver any news related to health and climate change. They only trust 41% their friends and family, and the lowest ranked was the TV journalist, and the religious leaders, which means that actually what is important when you deliver the news is not only the message, is who delivers it and in what context.
I come from a climate health background, and so yeah, I absolutely concur. What's the most annoying bit of climate dis or misinformation that you wish you could eradicate?
Um, I wouldn't say it's a misinformation, but it's like this perception. And I know you come from Extinction Rebellion, and I come from the disobedient movement in France 20 years ago. But I think that there is this kind of climate activist archetype with a hierarchy, and at the top is getting arrested at a disobedient action. And I just want to say that it's amazing. These actions are so needed, so refreshing.
Mhm.
But you can be a climate activist just staying at home, building a community, with respect and care. And we are the majority. A lot of us are climate activists, and it can take a lot of different forms. The moms are doing an amazing job, etc. So yeah, let's not do any kind of hierarchy because we're all in the same boat, let's say. And we all want a positive change.
That's very good. That's a very interesting answer I've not heard before, and obviously a personal connection. What's the number one source of climate information for you?
I have so many, it's super hard, but to be very honest, I think that Le Monde in France is really important because they cover like their scope is quite large. So I would say Le Monde, but I also read a lot of independent media, Reporter, l'Observatoire des Multinationales. So we have a lot of great medias in France and abroad.
And finally, do you have a go-to analogy or metaphor when you're going to someone who doesn't know much about it to try and explain the climate and nature crisis to them?
Yeah, I feel like this is so huge that you need to bring it back to like the personal level to make it relatable and to go back with this health analogy. I would say something that is as easy as, if you have a human body, your body is 70% of water, and you have this temperature at 37 degrees. When you're at 1 + 5 extra degrees, you're sick. It's fever, whatever you call it. It's fever. And it's the same for the climate. The Earth is 70% water, and the average temperature, I think, is 13 degrees with a certain amount of CO2. But it's totally disturbed now, and we really need to heal the planet, cool it, even though we cannot really cool it, but at least limit the way that the global warming now is affecting all of us.
That's my favourite metaphor as well. Well, here endeth the quickfire round. So let's go back to so you've had this great success. You're really you're now keyed into the potential of digital. And I remember us discussing before we started recording that was maybe the sort of the antecedent into developing this AI tool, Understories. So firstly, tell me a bit more about like that journey of the genesis in your brain, and then go on and introduce to the audience what Understories is.
Well, thank you. I think that the success is collective, and it was also sometimes very hard. But so yeah, I had the privilege of meeting great people, great activists, and also to be well to consider communications as a real expertise, and not something that you do. You push a button and it happens. It's not like that. When you have a front page, it's like months of preparations, etc. And every word is important when you write something because the story needs to, touch people's mind and hearts, etc. So for me, I was like, I don't understand why we're not more data driven. I don't understand why we don't use the science and all the research that is done, and we keep on, pushing this over-engineered message that we don't even use in our daily life. I don't talk like that when I am, having a coffee or what. We're normal people, it's human to human. So for me, I was like, okay, let's stop this tendency of control, of pretending we're so smart that, normal people can't understand because we talk to policymakers, and policymakers are also normal people. They have a lot of worries. So they also need to be talked to as humans. And so I did this break. I read a lot. I collected all the research I had and the new ones, because now we live in a digital world and, we have even more precise metrics. And then I went to this MIT program about sustainable AI, even though we agree that this is not the right wording. And, MIT and all these American universities, they're a bit like, hello, we don't know each other, but in 3 months, in 3 weeks, you will build a capstone project with strangers. So I did that, and we did a collective program, a collective project on methane leaks. But at the same time, we were building in a team this methane leaks tool. I really felt like, okay, this is the architecture and how we could do something about climate narratives. If we have these different layers of governance that happen in our heads as head of communications, you know that when you write, you have these criteria entering, they're competing, and you want something to be balanced and meaningful at the end. Now a machine can do that, and it can do it better than you if you feed them with the research that you have and you don't have the time to, merge in your head, etc. And that's the way I felt like we need to have a narrative framework that is based on these 8 criteria. And these 8 criteria are the criteria that we kind of forget to check every time we write. Like I read something and that's a sentence, it has a meaning, but that's only information. There is no emotional connection. So I was on the research and I put all these 8 criteria. That's narrative framework. But because AI can be like out of control, and that's true, I also wanted to have a second layer of governance that was an ethical one, so that there's no possible greenwashing, so that there's no exaggeration, no fake news, etc. So I built 6 criteria. And actually, these 6 ethical criteria were the same that we use in the capstone project about the methane leaks. So I owe them to a researcher based in Colombia called Manuela Ramos, and she's amazing. And all my colleagues at the MIT were amazing. And then I also felt like we have an issue with AI because it's so consuming and, it has disastrous impact for the environment. So for me, if I wanted to build such a tool, it shouldn't be a tool that was free for access for anyone or everyone. So right now it's just a research pilot. But if it were to be developed, I would put a cap. And the cap is 30 messages per month per person. And, even if there are 10,000 of users, at the end, the impact is very light because everything is structured so that it makes sense. And in addition to these different layers of governance, you have the big brain, the real brain, and this real brain and knowledge base is the 50 report, but it's not exactly the reports as such. It's a synthesis of the report, and the synthesis of this report is matched between the 8 criteria. So that's how I built it, based on an orchestration with different agents, prompts, instructions, and a way to make it work. And like I tested it and it works. So yeah.
And so if you could just give us your elevator pitch, what is Understories in one sentence?
In one sentence, Understories scores your messages against research-backed criteria and deliver something that moves people.
So I've used it a little bit. So you put in a bit of text, and it gives a score, and then at the other end, it will make some corrections to you according to what this research says, what the climate communication science says, and then it will give a new score at the end because it's helped you develop the narrative in a certain way.
Yes, exactly. You have a before and after, and that's why it's understories.io. It's like the historical input output. So you have the message that is a draft you have written, and most of the time it's very well. But of course, it can be improved, and the tool improves it. But we're in this we want to learn together. We don't want to be dependent on the machine. So it's not just like I like DeepL. DeepL translates your text, in real time. But I thought that only translating and having the new version was not enough. We wanted to explain why. It's not only on instinct, it's research back. So this sentence is great, but it should be moved before because we want to have a story at the beginning. This title is great, but this would be a better title according to this research, etc., etc. And the thing is that in the research, you don't only have the academics. You also have the practitioners, and practitioners will tell you if this message is for Colombia, young people, 16 years old to 25 years old, on this topic, you should really consider not only having a tweet, but maybe doing a video. There's also how people consume the news. So that's the theoretical because the research pilot is not the full stack of 50 reports, but that's exactly the way that people learn to be better communicators. And at the end, they write so well that they don't need the tool.
Very good. Very good. I like the fact that you actually start with a piece of copy that you've written yourself.
Yeah.
I know that there's been some resistance recently to people, for example, trying to write LinkedIn posts really quickly, and ultimately they're now abandoning it because you can spot it, and indeed, LinkedIn bots are scraping to see whether it is AI generated text and so on. You seem also to have, to a certain extent, addressed the energy use issue as well. So give us a benchmark. So if you've got that climate communications professional and they're using their 30 messages limit, what is that, per month, per year, per day?
Um, I think that if we're 10,000 people, users, whatever the climate communicators or whatever status they are, and they use 30 messages per month, at the end of the year, the consumption should be 1 or 2 flyback Paris-Tokyo. So it's very light, actually. It's super light. I think
Okay.
it will be lighter because the tool trains itself, so it's like a closed loop. And also because we know that what we call in AI the inference cost, which is at the application level, is getting more and more light. So there is an efficiency benefit on this part, which is different from the infrastructures with the data centers and yeah.
So you're saying you could help improve the communications of the international civil society through the use of 2 long haul flights per year.
Yeah, and my claim is also that this is marginal if at the end we build better campaigns. So, maybe an organization can do an A/B testing, how it's done the way they do it now and how it's done with Understories, and see if they have any kind of benefit. I think so in terms of fundraising and the money they can collect, in terms of more signatures and impact, etc., etc. So the return on investment for me is really important, and we have a potential trying to use such tools, but that's not the only way climate communications can benefit from AI. Of course, it's good to have this conversation open because there are real worries with the AI impact, and I don't want to be like naive. And I make the apology of this tool and this technique. I just feel like now this is very needed because we have a story problem.
What about? I mean, earlier on in this podcast, you've spoken beautifully about the wind in the trees and the rain on the window pane, and yet this is about AI is about doing something that's very, very tech heavy. It's all plastic, it's all rare metals, but also B, it's about like going away from like the reality. And there would be, maybe the more hard line amongst us who would argue that it's not just AI. We need to get rid of mass communication, satellites, and so on, and start to live, more in harmony with the environment. So, what would you say to the people who would object in that way?
I think they are right, and I think that again we need resistance, we need accountability, and I have my closest friends are part of the climate movement, of course. So it was a bit difficult for me. I sending like this, okay, hello, I built this. Can you give me a feedback? And I really expect some pushback, and it didn't happen. So I was a bit surprised. I feel that also when you know how some NGOs operate, it's not like they were exemplar, like the militant purity is also something that we should question. And I feel like this is a space and a niche I want to explore, because resisting is not enough. We need to build. And this is something I'm building as part of my professional break that resonates because, just one post on LinkedIn. Now we have 28 countries. Belgium and Kenya just joined. And, let's see what happens. But everybody should go there online, and we should continue communicate. So yeah, for me, the conversation is very open. I really value people making and taking the initiatives to build something like your podcast. That's an initiative, and it's a lot of work. And you could
Lots
do
of work.
something else. It's a lot of work for me too, for Understories. I feel like, but I think it's important not only to criticize and resist, but also to build. And the fact is that if you only resist to AI, you give in, you give it to the main narrative of big tech companies that say that AI is an hegemonic technology, when I think it should be open source, local, sovereign, and this is a tool that proves it among so many other tools, so I want to be part of this movement rather than the other, but I'm very happy this other movement exists too. And, maybe in 2 months I will tell you, oh, that was such a crazy idea I had. It's over, etc. But I
Oh, I
tried
don't
it.
think so.
Let's see.
Do you get any more podcast invites apart from me?
Not yet.
Or maybe after this has gone out.
I don't know. I'm happy to be with you and having this nice conversation.
So we are overrunning, but I don't care because like there's so much to do. I'm sure Alex, my producer, is gonna curse me for the extra editing. Sorry, Alex. But let's go on to the final section now. I mean, I could discuss it for hours. I vacillate back and forth on AI all the time. You know, some days I'm for it, other days I say never again. But let's move on for now. So this is finally, I'm really interested, like going back into your career. You know, Oxfam, Friends of the Earth. You know, your opinions more generally. I think that they are like super valid. You've had such a great career. So and maybe again we're going to be touching on some of the stuff we've already touched on already. But let's start. So how do you see the future of climate and nature communications?
I like these questions because I feel like we don't talk enough about it. On my first post on LinkedIn, I had written something like communicators are artists. I love science, but communications is not science; it is art. It's based on creativity, judgment, a lot of empathy. And right now with AI especially, I think that we need communicators more than ever. Actually, there is this momentum about storytellers being paid millions. Like this is the most sought after skill, because actually you cannot build, you cannot draft something. A machine cannot do that. A machine can edit it. You can brainstorm, but the raw material is your imagination, your knowledge. You know what you see, what you read, who you talk to, and who you talk with. And communicators have this in such a rich dimension, not only information, but we have information, we have emotions, and we have the narrative and the behavioral content. And I think that we also value because, you know, I was in Ethiopia, I remember, and being talking one-to-one with a farmer there. I have the material of her story, and she can tell her better herself, tell it better herself. But we are a direct link with so many stories that we can promote the right way. So for me, the future is very good for communicators, but we really need to, you know, organize and assert our power, our narrative power.
That's it. We have the narrative power because we have the truth, and it's
Yeah.
there for all to see, and it affects everybody. And there are so many angles at which you can attack it. You know, when you know, there's you know, say depression or you know, nihilism amongst the climate communicators, we are winning. You
Yeah.
know, every study out there, with the exception of the States, the majority of people knows that there is a problem, knows that it's our fault, and wants their governments to do more. There's the 89 project and so on. And when you think about the almost limitlessly funded budget of the PR machine against it, and you know, it's a factor of, you know, 1 to 100 in terms of budget to what we've got to what they've got. We're winning because we have the truth, and the truth has such great sort of value. You know, and people have A, got to realize that the majority of people know there's a problem, and B, the power of the truth. You know,
I agree.
so what's the best piece? So what's the best piece of advice you've received in your climate communications career?
There's a lot of frustration, and that's why people also in the movement sometimes are a bit depressed or like. I think it's very valid to feel climate anxiety or guilt, you know, all this range of emotions. But I also feel that we don't talk enough, ourselves and others, about positive emotions. And I feel like, so when I was at Oxfam, 6 months after my boss, the director of communications, left Oxfam to become the director of communications at Greenpeace. So it was not because of me, you know, it was just happened. And I really liked her. And when she left, she had this small meeting just with us communications team, and she shared a few tips. And one that stayed with me was, we are militants mais pas chiants, which means in English, we are activists but not boring. You know, let us not be boring. Let us be silly, feel the joy and some happiness in the way that we do our work, because that's the way that then people will relate to us. And for me, it's very important to always keep this silly inner child energy. So that, yes, it's very hard. It's frustrating. Sometimes you book cry days, but you also should book happy days and, this kind of. And for me, I feel like, yeah, we're very privileged doing a job that we love and that is important. So, yeah, militant mais patient.
There we go. There's a clip right there for our social media. That's very good. What advice would you give to someone who's just finished their MA, their MSc? They're just going out into the world for the first time and they want to devote their life to climate communications. What advice would you give them?
Um, well, they should not devote their life to the cause, but really take care of yourself. I think it's very important to. This is like a long run, kind of journey, and you will change in this journey. You will meet different people. You will be a different person. So, be mindful that your job is not your identity, and stay connected with people outside of the movement. For me, it was very important in terms of sanity to just sometimes go and meet with my childhood friends, and they didn't care that I was trending topic with my work the day before, that I got a front page, and it was very refreshing. So that you don't develop this kind of ego. I'm so important. This is no, you're just one of many people fighting, and you have the luck to have a platform because you work in a big organization. So staying humble and, not take care of yourself, your mental health. Because if you lose touch and connection with what's happening in the world, you won't do a good job.
That's a very good point. Definitely something I've been guilty of at various times over the years. I mean, I've been in this game since 2019, not my whole career, but yeah, that's very important.
Same with me, I had like mental health kind of consideration at some point. I felt like this is absorbing me and consuming me. So I really need to, and now I tell, young people get, not get a life, but try to build a life that is balanced and happy.
What's the most important environmental message that you think the public need to hear?
I think that we are important and we are powerful. It's very important that the way the news is made, the way that perceptions are built in this cultural battle, not resisting but fighting, but also not being just a bystander, but be, if you can, a protagonist. I think this kind of confidence and assertiveness is very important because I think we are important and powerful.
And this is our last question we end every podcast with, and particularly relevant, bearing in mind our conversation over the last hour. So those 10,000 climate and nature communicators who are going to start using your Understories tool 30 times a month, if they're all there standing behind me right now and you could say, just focus on one strategy, one thing, what do you determine that strategy to be?
I think that in relation to what we discussed also, with these 8 criteria, so you have clarity, but for me, the most important criteria is really the hope-doom balance. So if we were to, discuss together, brainstorm, etc., the one I would define was really let us make an effort not to do 50-50, but really put 70% of hopeful message in our communications. Not to be naive, but because when people will receive it, if it's well written or not well written, whatever, you will need an iteration until it gets into their head, into their body, and to their hearts, etc. And if you start with 30%, the infinite pool of worry, again, we will not include this climate communications message. But if you do 70%, you have more chances to do that. So for me, it's really, let's put more hopeful messages and, encourage people or congratulate people, just for joining and being part of this big movement. I think it's very important.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, this is the podcast of busy climate comms professionals. So before we say goodbye, like what's next on your to-do list, climate comms wise? What's the next thing you've got coming up, Caroline?
So next week I'm meeting with the researchers about Understories. And then on the website, everything is kind of explained, but the research library is not published yet. And I plan to publish it maybe in July or end of June. So I'm working on this library to be public and to have feedback also, because I don't cover all the climate communications. The South-North proportion is not balanced, but I feel like a lot of people could contribute. And like, okay, I know this research and you didn't report it on your library, let's add it, etc. So yeah, I'm on it.
Oh, okay. So we've got an e-shot coming out next week to our database, and we can put a message in there to get in touch with you. Should we do that?
Yeah, totally.
Brilliant. Let's do that. Well, look, I really appreciate your time, and many congratulations on Understories. It's such a magnificent tool, and
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, and see you soon, I hope. Thank you, Tom.